Grace sat quietly in the upscale restaurant, surrounded by friends and family gathered to celebrate her daughter Emily's college graduation. The room buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the warm glow of pride. Emily, still wearing her cap, beamed at the head of the table. Grace felt her heart swell. For years she had sacrificed her own dreams so this day could happen. She leaned back in her chair, thinking the toast from her husband Mark would seal the joy of the moment. But then, Mark raised his glass and cleared his throat. "I've decided to start a new life without you," Mark said loudly, his champagne glass still in the air. The words cut through the air sharper than broken glass. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. Dozens of eyes turned first to Mark, then to Grace. They waited for the tears, the anger, maybe even a dramatic scene. But Grace only smiled faintly. "Congratulations on your honesty," she said, her voice calm, steady. The quiet in the restaurant deepened. Emily's face went pale, her smile collapsing into shock. Grace reached for her daughter's hand and squeezed it gently. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," she whispered, ignoring the storm brewing across the table. At the back of the room, Grace noticed Lisa, Mark's much younger girlfriend, shifting uncomfortably among people Grace had once called friends. Friends who clearly knew about the affair but said nothing. Grace's heart hardened. She slipped a cream-colored envelope from her bag and placed it beside Mark's plate. Mark frowned. "What's this?" he asked, his confident expression flickering. "Something for you to read later," Grace replied smoothly. Then she stood, kissed Emily on the cheek, and turned to the stunned guests. "This day is about my daughter's success. Please enjoy your meal. I wish you all a pleasant afternoon." Without another word, she left the restaurant. The heavy doors swung closed behind her, shutting out the anxious whispers. Outside, the summer heat wrapped around her like a blanket. For the first time in years, Grace felt she could breathe. She heard the doors slam open again. Mark's voice rang out, desperate now. "Grace, what have you done?" She kept walking, her heels tapping against the pavement, a small smile tugging at her lips. The envelope contained the first piece of a revenge she had been carefully planning for months. Grace had always been the steady one. While Mark dreamed big, failed big, and started over again, she made sure the family stayed afloat. She saved for Emily's education when Mark gambled on foolish ventures. She worked long hours at Truvanta Corporation, a respected finance firm, while Mark drifted between passions. She had shelved her own dream, starting a consultancy for women, because she kept waiting. Waiting for Mark to change. Waiting for stability. Waiting for the right time. But now, she wasn't waiting anymore. 3 months earlier, Grace had noticed small irregularities in their joint bank accounts. At first, it looked like rounding errors, small transfers to an unfamiliar account. But Grace, with her 30 years in finance, saw patterns others might miss. She didn't confront Mark right away. Instead, she watched. She tracked. She quietly built a map of his betrayals. The dinners, the jewelry, the weekends with Lisa, all paid for with money he claimed they didn't have. Then came the text messages. Mark had left his phone unlocked one evening, and curiosity got the better of her. Grace scrolled through conversations filled with promises. "After Emily's graduation, I'll finally tell her," Mark had written. Lisa had replied with a heart emoji and the words, "Our new life starts tomorrow." Grace sat frozen with the phone in her hand, her stomach twisting. He thought she had no idea. He thought she would play the fool forever. Grace remembered the prenuptial agreement Mark had insisted on nearly 3 decades earlier. Back then, she had more family wealth than he did. He wanted protection for his future earnings. He got it, but the contract also had a fidelity clause. And unlike Mark, Grace had never forgotten it. Quietly, she began gathering proof. Every bank transfer. Every receipt. Every careless message. She visited lawyers. She built a case. Piece by piece, she assembled a fortress around herself and Emily. On the morning of Emily's graduation, while Mark rehearsed his dramatic announcement, Grace's lawyer had already filed the divorce papers. The documents were sitting safely in the court system, hidden from Mark's eyes. Grace knew exactly what he would do, when he would do it, and how he would try to frame the story. But she had flipped the script. The envelope she handed him at the restaurant was only the beginning. When Grace reached their home later that afternoon, she wasn't surprised to find Mark's suitcases tucked neatly in the back of the closet. He had packed in advance, ready to vanish into his new life. She shook her head, amused at his predictability. Clothes folded with care, shirts pressed, shoes polished, yet all of it built on lies. Grace walked to the living room, sat down with her laptop, and reviewed the latest legal documents while her phone buzzed endlessly with calls and messages. She ignored them all, except for Emily. To her daughter she wrote, "I'm okay. This isn't your burden to carry. Enjoy your graduation day. We'll talk tonight. I love you." Grace knew Emily would be upset, maybe even angry, that she hadn't told her sooner. But she wanted her daughter to celebrate her achievement free from scandal, at least for a few hours. The storm could wait. For now, Emily deserved her moment. Hours later, Mark's car screeched into the driveway. The front door slammed open. "Grace." His voice echoed through the house. "Where are you?" She sat calmly in the living room, laptop closed, a folder of documents neatly stacked beside her. Mark stormed in, face flushed, the envelope crumpled in his hand. "What is this?" he demanded. "You served me with divorce papers today of all days." Grace folded her hands in her lap, her expression serene. "I thought it aligned nicely with your plans," she said. "You wanted to start your new life." "I'm simply helping with the transition." Mark's jaw tightened. "You had no right to." "I had every right," Grace cut him off, her tone firm. "Just as you had the right to choose Lisa. We all make choices, Mark." Mark tried to regain his composure. "The prenup expired years ago," he said smugly. "Any lawyer will tell you that." Grace's lips curved into a small smile. "Actually, it didn't. Section 12 clearly states the fidelity clause remains in effect for the duration of the marriage. Perhaps you should have read it more carefully." The color drained from his face. The very contract he had forced her to sign now stood as his ruin. "You can't do this to me," Mark muttered, collapsing onto the couch. Grace tilted her head. "We built this life together, and then you chose to end it." "Not me." His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it, but Grace knew who it was. Lisa. Waiting, impatient, wondering why her carefully planned future hadn't started yet. "You've always been calculating, Grace," Mark said, trying a softer tone. "But this is cold. What about our history? 28 years means nothing to you." Grace studied him, this man she had once loved. "Our history meant everything. That's why your betrayal cut so deep." His eyes softened. "Then maybe we can fix this." "I made a mistake." "No, Mark. This wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. A year-long deception." Grace reached for her phone, tapped the screen, and pressed play. A recording filled the room, Mark's voice saying, "After the graduation, I'll tell her it's over. A public setting is better. She won't make a scene in front of everyone." Then Lisa's voice, "And she has no idea about the money." Mark again, "None. Grace trusts me completely. That's her weakness." Mark's face drained of color. "You recorded me." "Not in Georgia," Grace replied calmly, "where one-party consent is enough. And not when it's in your own home. I didn't record your private moments with Lisa. I'm not cruel. I only recorded your plans to defraud me." He sprang to his feet. "I need to make some calls. Your attorney might be a good start," Grace replied. "I'll be staying at Sarah's tonight," she added, reaching for her overnight bag. Mark's eyes widened. "My sister's house." Grace nodded. "She knows. She was the first to see you with Lisa last Christmas. You promised her it was nothing, but when she realized you were lying, she came to me." Mark stumbled back, stunned. His own sister had betrayed his secret. "Everyone's against me," he muttered. Grace paused at the doorway. "Ironic, isn't it?" she said softly. "You had until tomorrow evening to remove your things from the house. After that, the locks will be changed." Mark's desperation broke through. "What about Emily? Have you thought about how this affects her?" Grace turned, eyes blazing. "Don't you dare use our daughter as a shield. You weren't thinking about her when you planned your beachfront escape with Lisa." His phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen and groaned. Grace arched an eyebrow. "Problem. Lisa's at the apartment already," he admitted. "She's moved her things in." Grace allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "The apartment you put in both your names? The lease you signed last month?" Mark nodded. "You might want to check with the leasing office. The application was flagged for credit issues and never completed. They called our home phone. I handled it." Grace walked out, leaving him speechless.
His perfect plan unraveled thread by thread.
At Sarah's bungalow across town, Grace was welcomed with a tight embrace.
"I just heard from Emily," Sarah said.
"Are you okay?" "Better than expected," Grace admitted.
Sarah poured 2 glasses of wine.
"What did you put in that envelope that rattled him so badly?" Grace explained everything: the divorce filing, the evidence of financial deception, and most importantly, the prenup.
Sarah let out a sharp laugh.
The irony is delicious.
Grace's phone rang. It was Emily.
"Mom, I'm coming over," her daughter said immediately. "You don't have to. I'm already on my way. Dad's telling everyone you've lost your mind. He's saying horrible things."
Grace sighed. Of course he was. He always rewrote stories to make himself the victim. "Let him talk," she said softly.
"The truth will come out soon enough." 20 minutes later, Emily arrived at Sarah's house, still in her graduation dress, her makeup smudged from tears.
She rushed into Grace's arms.
"Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, voice muffled against her mother's shoulder.
Grace stroked her hair.
"I didn't want to ruin your final semester. You worked so hard for today." Emily pulled back, anger flashing. "Well, Dad ruined it anyway." They sat together in the living room as Grace revealed everything: Mark's betrayal, the stolen money, the plan to humiliate her. Emily's jaw clenched.
"I knew something was wrong. He was different. Always on his phone. But I never thought," her voice broke. Sarah touched her hand gently.
"None of us want to see the truth in people we love."
The doorbell rang.
Sarah opened it to find Mark standing there, Lisa trailing behind him, clearly uncomfortable. Mark barged into the living room, anger replacing his earlier desperation. "Grace, this is insane. Unfreeze the accounts and we can talk like adults." Emily stepped forward, blocking him. "Adults? You announced you were leaving Mom on my graduation day."
"That wasn't adult, Dad." Lisa tugged at his sleeve.
"Mark, maybe we should." "No," he snapped. "I'm not leaving until she acts rational." Sarah crossed her arms. "My sister-in-law is the only rational one here. You created this mess." Grace remained seated, composed. "The accounts stay frozen until the hearing in 3 days. The judge will decide." 3 days.
Mark shouted.
"What am I supposed to do?" "You have your personal account," Grace said evenly. Lisa's head snapped toward him. "You have a separate account? With how much?" The cracks in their alliance widened.
Emily glared at her father.
"You told me money was tight. I worked 2 jobs to buy my textbooks while you spoiled her."
Mark paled.
"That's not how it was." "It's exactly how it was," Emily cut in.
Her voice trembled with fury. "Please leave. I can't even look at you right now." Mark's bravado collapsed.
He muttered something under his breath, then turned toward the door. Lisa followed reluctantly, her face twisted with doubt.
Before stepping out, Mark looked back.
"This isn't over, Grace.
I'll fight you."
Grace's gaze never wavered. "You're welcome to try." When the door shut, Emily crumpled into her mother's arms, sobbing. "I've never talked to Dad like that," she whispered.
Grace kissed the top of her head.
"Sometimes doing what's right is painful."
Sarah lifted her glass of wine. "To new beginnings," she said softly. Grace raised hers in return.
3 days later, in a small courtroom, the judge reviewed the prenuptial agreement. Mark sat beside a nervous young lawyer clearly out of his depth. Grace's attorney, David, presented the evidence with calm precision. The judge adjusted her glasses. Section 18 states the fidelity clause remains active for the duration of the marriage. There is no expiration date. Mark's lawyer stammered. We contest its validity."
The judge raised a brow. "On what grounds? Your client signed it. He violated it."
"Evidence of hidden fund transfers only strengthens the case." She ruled the accounts would remain frozen, the family home in Grace's possession.
Mark's face darkened as the gavel struck.
The divorce was finalized months later, ironically on what would have been Grace and Mark's 29th anniversary. Grace retained the home, most investments, and her independence.
Mark left with little more than his clothes and his regrets. Lisa had long since abandoned him when the money dried up.
Emily, though still hurt, stood firmly by her mother's side. And Grace? She finally launched her financial consultancy for women, guiding others through the storms she had survived. Sitting in her new office one morning, she thought back to that envelope she had slid across the table at the restaurant. It had not only ended a broken marriage, it had unlocked a future she had almost forgotten she deserved.
Grace smiled. This wasn't just revenge. It was rebirth.